Are you a terrorist? Chances are you could be, at least according to your government. And I'm going to tell you just what I'm talking about. Now, I'm here at this article, and it says 72 types of so-called Americans that are considered so quote-unquote potential terrorists in official government documents. What is your government doing? They're planning for what? Martial law. They are planning to put you into these FEMA camps, but the only way they can do that is by saying that you are a so-called terrorist. They're going to turn the problem internally and make it seem like, oh my goodness, you are a domestic terrorist. You could be a terrorist. So we have to put you into these FEMA camps in the name of national security. And that's exactly what they're going to attempt to do. But it says, are you a conservative, a libertarian, a Christian, or a gun owner? Are you opposed to abortion, globalism, communism, illegal immigration, the UN, or the NWO? Do you believe in conspiracy theories? Do you believe that we are living in the end times? Or do you ever visit alternative news websites such as this one? If you answered yes to any of those questions, you are a so-called potential terrorist, according to official U.S. government documents. And I'm going to take you to some of these documents that your government has written out for you. And you're going to see just the type who are, and it even lists in this one document. Now, I'm going to go over these quickly with you, but basically they consider anyone a so-called terrorist who talk about individual liberties, who advocate for states' rights, who want to make a world a better place, the colonists who sought to free themselves from British rule, those interested in defeating the communists, those who believe that the interests of one own nations are separate from the interest of other nations or the common interest of all nations. And it goes on with political ideologies and tolerance towards other religions, those that take action to fight against the exploitation of the environment and or animals, anyone who's anti-gay, anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim, patriots, opposition to equal rights, so against the GLBTQ movement, members of the Family Research Council, members of the American Family Association. The list goes on. And anyone that is opposed to the NWO, anyone engaged in conspiracy theorizing, such as this video, anyone opposed to Agenda 21, anyone concerned about FEMA camps, militia, veterans, citizen movement, anyone that fears impending gun control or weapon confiscation, anyone that complains about bias, anyone who complains about paying taxes, you are considered a terrorist just for these things. Right-wing extremists, those who would refer to themselves as the Army of Yahuwah, citizens that have bumper stickers that are patriotic or anti the UN, because the UN is what? New World Order, so-called global government. What is that for? For total control of the world. Anyone that believes in conspiracy theories, even when they even say that anyone who even believes in the New World Order is considered a terrorist. How can that be possible when your president has even said that and talked about the New World Order on 9/11? On September 11th, 1990, George H.W. Bush even talked about the New World Order and the rule of law. Ironically enough, 11 years exactly before 9/11. So how can you be a terrorist if you're quoting what one of our presidents are saying? Could it be because our government's paranoid? Could it be because our government is beyond crazy? Could it be because they are planning to put people into these FEMA camps and they need any little reason to do it in the name of national security? Because the war on terror is a hoax. It didn't happen. There is no terror. 9/11 is an inside job perpetrated by your government to do what? To put you into FEMA camps soon enough. To gain what? Control, military, surveillance, police state, New World Order. That's exactly what that is. Now, if we go to this document here, it talks about from your government based on Defense Equal Opportunity Management Institute, Knowledge Equality and Readiness. It talks about extremism. It talks about what? Those who the government deem as political extremists, or those who are so-called extremists, who they consider a so-called threat. Because what does your government have to do in order to control? They have to make anything they can into a so-called threat and then use that as a basis and a means to put you into in FEMA camps in a controlled solution to their caused problem. And the document goes on to talk about the reading, references, and it goes on to talk about introductions and what who they consider extremists. They even give definitions between ideologies, extremism, and extremist, and the supremacist. Now, look at this, just this crazy, beyond just wicked definition. An extremist is someone who advocates the use of force or violence, advocates supremacist causes based on race, ethnicity, religion, gender, or national origin, or otherwise engages to illegally deprive individuals or groups of their civil rights. Huh. I checked, but the KKK, that's not extremist? Your government, that's not extremist? Wow, what hypocrisy. And then it goes on, and you can come here and read the government document yourself, but I just thought it's interesting because what is your government trying to do? They're trying to cause the problem and offer their own solution to that problem. By how? By staging these false flag events all over the place. And then what do they do after that? They then tell you that, oh my goodness, there was another false flag that didn't really happen, and if it did happen, it was staged ahead of time, like San Bernardino. Then they say, oh my goodness, there's a threat, we need your guns, we need your guns, we want your guns. They're trying to control you because the military's eating them up. And so then they say, oh, now we need a military police state and forced curfew to fight off this threat, because there's obviously a threat everywhere you go. And soon enough, the big threat that's going to come is the so-called alien threat. The last card. Who are the fallen angels? Why am I telling you all this? Because you need to see just how much of a hoax it really is, and how they're using the so-called war on terror, a rumor of war, revelation, to do what? To make an agenda, to cause an agenda. They know exactly what they are doing. Don't fall for any of what they try to tell you. I'm telling you this now. Now, if you go to this internment and resettlement operations, which is another government document and authorized to the Department of Defense and some other alphabet soups agencies, it's also the Department of the Army, your military. Why is it that they have laid out and planned out complete control? Not only that, but they even laid out bunkers and camps and even clothing for potential so-called political dissidents for prison and detention centers. Why have they done that? Why is that? I want to turn your attention to Appendix J and show you just what they're trying to do and the psyop that they're doing right now. Your government has already laid out the foundation for these FEMA camps. They know exactly how you're going to be entered, how they're going to control you, and exactly what is going to happen when you get there. The chip is ready to go. Everything is ready to go. Now, why is this important? Because it even shows you, why does it show you this map of these so-called FEMA camps? Why would they need to show this? Dislocated civilian resettlement facilities. Why do they have facilities that so-called prisoners need to go? They even show you the maps. They show you how they look. They show you where the food preparation is. Why would they need all that unless they're preparing for something? They show you recreational areas where you cannot get out. But is that all? They show you all of these things for what? What is the purpose here? Is there an agenda? The agenda is what? New world order, world control of these Satanists who are working in your government and working with Satan himself. 125 detainees, large tents that are required. Why? Why do they need all that? And according to your government, extremists who aren't even murderers, who aren't even psychopaths, who aren't even any of the sort or the like, they're the ones considered the terrorists? Christians are the terrorists? What? Veterans, patriots? That doesn't even make sense. But I'm going to show you another article by your government that came out. It was a report released, which even tells you and goes into details with who they deem are so-called terrorists. Now, if you saw on the legend and on the other page, you would have seen that there were guard towers as well. And you can watch my other subsequent FEMA video where they're actually building and constructing guard towers in stores and public malls behind your back. Be very watchful. This is called Project Megiddo, which is an FBI strategic assessment of look at this, of the potential for domestic terrorism in the U.S. undertaken in anticipation or of response to the arrival of the new millennium. So as you can see, they've been planning this since the year 2000. They are 16 years behind, as you can see. Why are they preparing for domestic terrorism? What is the purpose behind that? What is the agenda when most people who they consider terrorists aren't even actual terrorists unless they're funded by your government, unless they're funded by the CIA, such as the KKK. Who's behind them? The Jewish Zionists. I'll tell you why this is important to come. Now, this document goes into a list of who they consider are terrorists. They consider Christians, white supremacists, so you have your constitutionalists, your patriots, your militias or your veterans, Black Hebrew Israelites, and those who believe in end time prophecy, and those who believe in the apocalypse, those who believe in Judgment Day. They are considered so-called terrorists. And by the way, if you don't think that they're writing your name down on the list for even watching this video right now, well, guess what? They are, because they're pinpointing your every move. They're checking your every message, your every phone text, your every call, they're your every move. Literally, they're keeping a track on you on camera. Why? Because they want to see if you are a so-called terrorist. And they're going to say, in the name of terror, you need to go to these FEMA camps in the name of national security, when they're the ones who caused the threat to begin with. Oh, it's so ironic. But if you thought that was bad, it gets even worse, because the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, the DHS, or another alphabet soup, came out with this unclassified document that talks about what? Right-wing extremism, current economic and political climate, fueling resurgence in radicalization and recruitment. What are they talking about here? They're talking about right-wing extremists. They're talking about who they deem as terrorists, or the so-called war on extremism. Another rumor of war. Are you starting to see what's happening here? Are you starting to see the agenda? Are you starting to see the book of Revelation come to pass? I hope so, because this document was released on April 7th, 2009. And it was coordinated with who? The FBI. I'm telling you, they know exactly what they are doing. Now, I'm not going to read all of this, but I highly recommend you come here and check out these government documents, because I'm telling you, they tell you and highlight and outline everything what they're planning on doing, so you're without excuse, and so that you know exactly what's going on, and that this is not a conspiracy, because that's what your government's going to try to spoon feed you. And they're going to try to use government trolls and paid government trolls on YouTube to try to make it seem like that's the case, when it's not. But basically, it says that their so-called key findings is that the DHS Office of Intelligence and Analysis has no specific info that domestic right-wing terrorists are currently planning acts of violence, but right-wing extremists may be gaining new recruits by playing on the fears about several emergent issues. The economic downturn and the election of the first so-called African-American president present unique drivers for right-wing radicalization and recruitment. And by the way, your president is not African American, he is just African. Yes, he comes from Kenya. And you can do the research on that on your own. But basically, it says threats from white supremacists and violent anti-government groups during 2009 have been largely rhetorical and have not indicated plans to carry out violent acts. Nevertheless, the consequences of a prolonged economic downturn, including real estate foreclosures, unemployment, and an inability to obtain credit, could create a fertile recruiting environment for right-wing extremists, and even result in confrontations between such groups and government authorities similar to those in the past. Wow, a lot of that sounds just like what's happening now, because last I checked, the economy is beyond downward. Real estate foreclosures are going up. Employment just reached up to 218%, I believe. And by the way, the statistics that your government's telling you are beyond flawed. The government, it's like 25% unemployment, not that 10% or whatever they tell you. Inability to obtain credit, that's happening now too. So are they getting ready for something? Are they preparing for something? By the way, when they say right-wing extremists, that they're the ones planning for something, no, it's the CIA and the FBI that are getting them ready. They're training these so-called extremists. They're the ones doing this. They're the ones training them to be so-called extremists. The white supremacist and violent anti-government groups like the KKK, they fund that. The Zionists fund that, just like the Zionists fund ISIS. We know that the American government funds and created ISIS. We know that John Kerry created ISIS. They can't hide it anymore. We know that. We know for a fact that they're using that as an excuse to go to war, rumors of wars. We know exactly what they're doing. And it's all through their propaganda. And so this talks mostly about how it relates to what they consider terrorism or extremism because of the first so-called African American president. But what are they using this for? They're getting ready for what? Political unrest, civil unrest, come martial law, which is even at the door. So I highly recommend you check this stuff out. It's very important. I'm going to leave the links below because you need to see what time it is and you need to see what your government's planning and what they're doing. Like I said, I try to do my best to give you all really good authentic research and actual government documents for all you skeptical, for all of those of you who are skeptical out there, because that is what your government's planning. This isn't what I'm telling you. This is what your government's, this is according to your own government. So hopefully you can see it. And if you still think that this is a conspiracy, if you still think that this is, this is a conspiracy, this isn't really happening, your government is telling you that it is. So I think it's time for you to wake up. But hopefully you are woke, and hopefully you'll start seeking Yahuwah and his true son, Yahusha. That way you all may be well with you and you will be protected because judgment is even at the door. This is Truth Unveiled. Shalom.